Damn it, think, man, think!
Will you turn the lights off? Some of us are trying to sleep.
Sorry, roomies, but if I don't get this thesis done, Professor Wolverine is gonna flunk me. And his flunkings involve dicing the flunkee with the stabbing and the cutting and the piercing of the vital organs. I've got 3 hours left to finish a 50-page thesis on the effects of spider venom on the mutant healing factor, or I'll flunk out, get my mutant powers taken away, and be exiled to the Midwest, where I'll probably have to make a living prostituting myself on the internet. And not the good kind of prostitution either.
Hey guys, have you heard the latest rumor?
Oh yeah, about Professor Iceman?
No, not that. Professor Wolverine is dead!
Oh, thank God! Thank you, God!
Wow, cold-blooded reaction, dude. Anyway, as of right now, all those classes are going to be taught by Spider-Man.
Spider-Man? Hi everyone, welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, The Last Angry Geek. With the recent success of Marvel movies, there's been a backlash against those titles that Marvel licensed to other studios before they started producing their own films. I'm sure you've noticed Marvel putting an emphasis on Avengers comic books, while the Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and X-Men titles have suffered from lackluster storylines, with even the mutants taking on the role of villains in the recent Avengers vs. X-Men event.
Everyone assumes this is Disney dictating policy to Marvel, telling them to put out comics on the characters they can use for TV and film, and to ignore or downplay those properties that they don't possess the film rights to. Is it fair? No, but that's business. However, with the recent deal struck with Sony, the Amazing Spider-Man films are dead in the water, and Spidey will debut in Captain America: Civil War. But what of the X-Men? Facing an uncertain future in the upcoming Secret Wars, the mutants may be getting exiled from the rest of the Marvel Universe.
So let's celebrate their remaining time in the Marvel Universe proper with what may be their last crossover event ever. Probably not. Spider-Man and the X-Men, issues 4 and 5.
For a while now, the X-Men have been split into 2 camps, one led by Cyclops, who re-established the Xavier Institute, and Wolverine, who rebuilt on the old Xavier school grounds the new Jean Grey Institute. However, with Wolverine's death, there remains a problem. Wolverine suspected one of his students in the special program, where he placed those troubled students who don't get along with others, was a spy for one of their enemies. To bring a fresh perspective to this, he asked Spider-Man, who pre-One More Day was teaching high school, to take over this class, something the current headmaster Storm was less than happy about. Spidey and students then ran into several Spider-Man villains cooperating with several X-Men villains, with Peter Parker no closer to sniffing out the traitor. The students are, from the new X-Men, Hellion, an arrogant telekinetic, and Rockslide, who's made of rock and twice as smart. From Jason Aaron's Wolverine and the X-Men title, Shark Girl, who turns into a shark-human hybrid, and Eye-Boy. Guess what his powers are? And left over from Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men, which came before the other New X-Men I previously mentioned, Ernst, a shrunken powerhouse, No Girl, a telepathic brain kept alive in a floating terrarium, and former Xavier School rioter Glob Herman, a loser made of living wax. Issue 4 opens with a bank robbery in New York City. Swarm, Delilah, Melter, 8-Ball, Squid, and Killer Shrike, or as they are better known, the all-new Sinister Six, are behind this crime when they're stopped by Spider-Man and his amazing mutant class.
Not to be that guy, but let's face it, I am. Since Swarm is composed of hundreds of bees, wouldn't it be better to call them the Sinister 600, or better yet, the Sinister 666, or am I overthinking this? No, it's the writers who are wrong.
These villains are so lame, the mutants quickly take them down. The only real threat is former Nazi-turned-living bee colony Swarm. Before Spidey can stop him, Hellion disperses the bees. And although Spider-Man's upset that Julian may have just killed Swarm, the thought of murder cows the rest of the Sinister Six into surrender. The police show up to arrest everyone, and Hellion flies them out, wondering why Spider-Man hasn't been kicked off the staff yet. We flash back to the previous night with Storm wanting to kick Spider-Man off the staff. She's upset that he got students kidnapped. He points out that they were all kidnapped together by an X-Man villain, and by the way, shouldn't they be kissing since he's upside down and in her face right now? Peter Parker admits he doesn't want to be here. His life is probably falling apart without him, even though we cut to Parker Industries and see that his life is doing wonderfully without him. He finally tells her that Wolverine suspected a traitor in the school, a mutant working for one of their enemies, which upsets Storm since Logan didn't tell her all this was going on. A furious Aurora lets loose with some lightning bolts, but calms down after a bit. Although Spidey suspects Hellion or Glob, they've got anger issues, he still isn't sure who the traitor is. Storm finally agrees to let him keep teaching until he's caught the spy. Back at the Jean Grey school, Beast, along with his prized student Brew, decides to put Spider-Man in his place once and for all by challenging his class to a science-off. He assembles his students and tells them they're going to be recreating a villain's DNA analyzer for the science fair. He then puts Shark Girl and Rockslide in charge. Santo's good at identifying problems, and Ayara can manage people. Hellion is again pissed off that he wasn't made team leader, which only further alienates his friends. In Storm's office, Rachel Gray is furious that Storm is allowing Spider-Man to stay on. Furthermore, Storm won't allow Rachel to read his mind. But Rachel's already glimpsed into it and knows he's Peter Parker, an inventor and businessman, not unlike the rich men who put the Sentinels in charge and led to the dystopian future that she escaped from. Welcome back. Today on Ruskell.
Hello, and welcome to Ruskell. Ruskell is farmer in communist Ukraine. Then, 30 years ago, Ruskell comes to America and is now talk show host. Today on Ruskell, my co-worker is a male industrialist bitten by a radioactive spider, and I think I hate him.
If you would like to be a guest on Ruskell, bring a blanket and silk pajamas to his house. Warning, Ruskell has night terrors and will scream in your face. Rachel decides to read his mind, but is blocked by a strong psionic shield, giving her all the more reason to mistrust Spider-Man. What is he hiding? Rockslide and Shark Girl pick their teams, neither choosing Glob. Depressed, he's sent by Spider-Man to find No Girl. He sees that Beast has more or less taken over his class's project, driven by a need to defeat Peter. He finds Spider-Man's office has been broken into, and No Girl is there. Later, Glob asks Rockslide how he went from being a laughingstock to a guy who gets picked for team captain. Santo just started trying. He spoke up when he had ideas and started earning some respect. No one will just give Glob the respect unless he makes them. Except for Spider-Man. He's funny that way. Glob tells Spider-Man that No Girl was in his office. She claimed someone else was in there first, but Herman didn't see anyone. Beast's team has recreated a dimensional portal to Sword's orbiting space station, the Peak. Spidey's team has turned Sauron's DNA analyzer into an early cancer detector. Rachel again tries to read Spider-Man's brain, only to be stopped by No Girl, aka Martha Johansson as she was before her brain was removed, and a legion of Spider-Men.
Don't you mean a legion of spiders? Hey, whatever happened to Dr. Smith?
Cancer. Very sad.
Martha thinks reading Spider-Man's brain is wrong, but Rachel's duty is to the survival of the mutant race. She is Phoenix! Spidey gets a massive migraine as Martha and Rachel's battle tears apart the fair. Suddenly, Rachel knows who the mole is, but No Girl erases it from her mind. Peter takes No Girl out of the room and accuses her of being the mole when a scream draws them back into the fair. A Bamf, one of those mini Nightcrawlers, was supposed to come through their portal. What comes out is a Bamf, but possessed by a Venom symbiote. Before anyone can tell what happens next, Deathbird, evil alien empress, and several Brood, horrific bug aliens, come out, all possessed by symbiotes, shape-shifting slime balls. As Beast and Spider-Man catch up on each other's villains, the kids begin to gossip. Who is the mole? They quickly turn to Spider-Man's amazing friend, Firestar, to burn off the flammable black suits from the Brood, which then retreat back into the portal. When they last saw Deathbird, she was pregnant with Cyclops' nephew, don't ask, and had claimed asylum from the Shi'ar Empire on Sword's space station, the Peak. Spidey is pretty sure they can blame her new attitude on the symbiotes. After all, he should know he used to wear one. Rachel takes that as an admission of guilt and is still unhappy about her memories being wiped, but Beast refocuses them on retaking the Peak. He and Spider-Man head in, only for the special class to follow after them. The space station is trashed and the Symbi-Brood attack. To keep the aliens from invading Earth, they decide they need to shut down the portal, which Rockslide takes as needing to smash it beyond repair, stranding the mutants, and the one non-mutant superhero. As they continue to call Glob the Mole, Spider-Man explains the symbiotes are pests of the universe. Sooner or later, every space station gets infested with the black oil blobs.
Oh, sure. But when white alien blobs show up, we raise the price of real estate. I suppose these black oil blobs do nothing but drink and play nice. Take a hard look in the mirror, world.
Highboy notices the bugs are getting weak. It's because the symbiotes have drained the Brood, so they try and absorb the heroes, but Hellion runs them up in a telekinetic bubble. Sword's leader, Abigail Brand, with her own symbiote, attacks her boyfriend Hank, who has to stay behind to fight her. Glob points out that even though he doesn't have skin, he's not going to try to kill Hellion for symbiote skin because he's not evil. Hellion reminds him he was in the last version of the Hellfire Club. They find more infected crew who chase them. No Girl is pretty sure they're being herded. Sure enough, they arrive to find death venom in the middle of a symbiote web. She jumps Spider-Man, who orders Hellion to release one of his captured skins. He venoms up, but with no girl mentally protecting him from being fully possessed. Even though that's not a battle she's sure she can win. Peter invokes Deathbird's baby, giving her enough strength to fight off the possession as Hellion imprisons the last of the symbiotes. But ultimately, Martha loses control and Spider-Man is possessed. Beast saves the day by using a sonic ray gun to peel off the monster. Abigail explains that the Brood showed up seeking asylum, but they'd already been possessed by the symbiotes. However, they're still stuck on the peak, which can't support all these new life forms. They can dump the aliens into space, but they'll need a heat shield for the X-Men to land on Earth. Clive has an epiphany. He is a heat shield. They hook him up with a helmet for air and strap him to the front of their shuttle. His living wax body does absorb the heat for all the good it does Herman. He lands in a puddle of, well, himself, but is thankfully still alive. Back at the school, Spider-Man finally takes Martha aside for a talk. Erasing Rachel's memory makes her look like the mole. But she did fight for him back at the station. But Martha is not the mole. The mole is actually...
Ooh, so sorry. Class is over for now, but your signed reading for next time is issue 6 of this miniseries. That said, was this an epic team-up or just a big waste of time for both parties? Let's take a closer look at Spider-Man and the X-Men, issues 4 and 5.
When Jason Aaron decided to leave Wolverine and the X-Men, it was the end of an era. Aaron had crafted a series that nicely balanced action with a sense of humor that I hadn't seen since the Justice League International days in the 80s. The book was relaunched with a new creative team, but the quality of writing wasn't the same. Tack onto that the death of Headmaster Wolverine, and suddenly Wolverine and the X-Men doesn't even have Wolverine. This series, Spider-Man and the X-Men, with no A-list talent to speak of, however, proved to be an even better successor to Aaron's X-Men than the sequel series that had the same name. Aside from the Beast, Rachel, and Storm, writer Elliot Kalan never gets bogged down with big-name heroes. Instead, he calls a selection of mutant students, most of which have been in limbo since their original titles were cancelled. This gives him the freedom to grow several of the one-note wonders, like Rockslide and Shark Girl, and take them beyond their status as dumb humor guy and scary bites-everyone girl. The combination of villains that Spidey and the kids have to face makes sense, but until the last issue, which I don't want to spoil, there are never any A-list bad guys in this book. I was a big fan of many of these student X-Men characters, but it seemed like no one had any interest in using them. Kalan smartly draws from that large pool of talent to find the most troubled and disturbed mutants for Spider-Man's special class. Also, when I say that this book stars Spider-Man, I mean Spider-Man. Aside from one brief cutaway to Peter Parker's job, we never veer into his personal life, nor do we see him out of costume. This is a job for Spider-Man, even drawing on Parker's historical background, by returning him to the classroom that he hasn't been a part of since One More Day. The characters are inconsequential. The book is filled with mostly C and even Z-list characters, yet there's something here that works. You begin to root for these kids and find yourself having a good time. The jokes are fresh and funny and leave you with a smile on your face. The art, well, nothing to write home about, also lends itself to the book. Issue 4 was drawn by R.B. Silva, while Issue 5 was illustrated by Marco Faella. I believe Silva is the better of the two artists, but that's just my personal preference. He has a sense of style that really portrays some of the more inhuman X-Men as just that, not human. That said, Faella really brings a more fluid animated style to his work that works out well for the fight scenes.
Ultimately, Spider-Man and the X-Men works by creating a crossover between two franchises that never takes itself too seriously and doesn't want to rewrite the book on either property. It simply wants you to enjoy yourself, and I, for one, did. I give Spider-Man and the X-Men, issues 4 and 5, 4 stars out of 5. Until next time, hoping you've learned your lesson about enjoying comic books, this is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, The Last Angry Geek.
Cancer. Very sad.